Let's go ahead and go to Chuck Baldwin. Chuck Baldwin, good to have you here with us.
Alex, thank you very much for letting me come on your show.
You bet. I am fired up today. What about you? I'm seeing liberty, the awakening to tyranny, exploding.
Well, this Missouri fiasco, I think, is illustrative of what we're dealing with here. Whenever you can categorize people who vote for myself or Ron Paul or even Bob Barr as potential domestic terrorists and make that part of an official state police agency report, we are in deep doo-doo. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and that's the main reason we got you on, but there's a host of other issues I want to go over with you. But let's cover that first. The MIAC report, I've had a state rep on who confirmed with the head of the state police on the phone it's real. We called the state police. We put their names out in the article. People still couldn't believe that this was real. They thought I made this up, Chuck.
No, you didn't make it up, but I thank you for reporting it. Now, of course, it's all over the media. Even Rush Limbaugh talked about it the other day. The Missouri state papers have been carrying it quite a bit in the last couple of days, as you can imagine. And this thing is now beginning to get a life of its own. Thank you, Alex, for helping to break this story. Whoever that police officer was in Missouri who first contacted you, he's a real hero. I don't know who he is, but he sure did a great service to his country by alerting the public as to what is going on behind the scenes in the police department there in the state of Missouri. This thing is unbelievable. I mean, to categorize voters of Ron Paul, supporters of Ron Paul, Chuck Baldwin, Bob Barr, as potential domestic terrorists, not to mention the fact that if anyone opposes certain things, and I listed that in my column that I put out earlier this week, if someone opposes, for example, the New World Order, if they oppose the United Nations, gun control, the violation of posse comitatus,
RFID, if they're part of In the Fed or the Liberty Committee or the Constitution Party, and they say, oh, these groups are bad too. They have soup kitchens and try to work with the local police, talking about your group and others. And I mean, it's clear. And they say, but secretly they've got cell groups and they're really terrorists too.
Yeah, anybody that opposes any of the above, abortion on demand, illegal immigration, etc., is a potential domestic terrorist, a potential threat to the police forces there in the state of Missouri. I mean, can you imagine what the firestorm would be if instead of Bob Barr, Ron Paul, and myself had, let's say, Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton been named, with the insinuation that people who support these individuals may be considered domestic terrorists? Can you imagine what the mainstream press would do with something like that? And yet this is exactly what that report says there in the state of Missouri. We have sent, the three of us, Ron, myself, and Bob, have co-signed a letter to the governor and to the respective parties in Missouri demanding that they repudiate this report and apologize to the supporters of those who voted for us.
All right, Chuck, let me stop you. This is big news, and of course we broke it here. I have the original actual report here in my hot little hands right now. Specifically, what did Limbaugh say about it, A, and then B, where is a copy of this letter? I would like to publish it right now up at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com.
Okay, the letter, I have a copy, of course, in my possession, as does Bob Barr and
Will you do me a favor and scan it or email it over, and we'll post it and put a link over to your site?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
And as to what Limbaugh said, I really don't know exactly what he said. I didn't hear. I very seldom listen to Rush Limbaugh, but I've had several people call and tell me that he did bring it up on his program, or maybe a caller did, and they did talk about it for a few minutes. The point is that it's beginning to spread around the country.
Yeah, I knew it was in newspapers, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The newspapers and talk radio, of course, are the ones that are breaking the story right now. You were the first one to break it, as far as I know, and I thank you for that. But this is incredible. And the thing about it is, law enforcement agencies often share this kind of information with each other. So
no, sir, all 50 states have this. I actually have it from other states. It's just state police have asked me not to publish the copies they've got because they're scared, and I've gotten many similar reports. I've seen a Texas report on the same style letterhead a few years ago. It just wasn't this egregious, listing Ron Paul, yourself, and others. Correct.
As far as I know, this is the first report such as this that has actually named names. You know, they did this back in the 90s when Janet Reno was there in the Clinton White House. And but they did some of the same, kind of insinuations and broad brushing and so forth. But they didn't actually name names. But here we are now in 2009, and they've actually named Chuck Baldwin, myself, Bob Barr, and Ron Paul, and saying the supporters of those of us who ran last year as an independent party ticket are somehow considered dangerous and a potential domestic terrorist.
Yeah, well, I need to get Ron Paul back on. I don't like to bug him because he's so busy. But last Wednesday when we broke this, Thursday I got calls from listeners saying, well, we called Ron Paul's office. Of course, it wasn't Ron Paul. He hadn't heard about it yet. And they're saying it can't be real. And so I had to explain to them, send them to the site, and I said, I'm not going to call Ron at home. I've got his home number. But I said, give this to him. We don't make stuff up. You know that, right? And they said, no, we all know you and like you, Alex. And I said, good. It's real. The state police officers' names are there. Call the number for yourself. Confirm it's real. Because I got slapped around for 3 or 4 days, and folks are still saying I made this up, Chuck. It doesn't matter if the state police and state reps say they talked to the head of the state police. They're still, the establishment's still trying to deny this.
Well, that's incredible, because all anyone has to do is call the toll-free number and talk to the state officials there in Missouri, and they won't deny it one bit. In fact, they will defend. They'll just say that it's been misconstrued and people
we played recordings of it.
Context.
We've even played recordings of them on air. People say that's not real.
Yeah,
go ahead.
They don't deny it, but they don't deny it, is my point. I mean, they will readily admit that it's legitimate, and for the most part, they stand behind it. As far as Ron Paul, you're right. At first, I'm sure that the people in his office didn't probably believe it. As when I first heard the story, when somebody, told me, said, "Hey, have you heard the story coming out of Missouri?" And I said, "Oh, no, they didn't. They didn't do that." I mean, that's the first thing you think about. But then whenever you start to look at it closely and you realize, hey, it's real. This is not make-believe. Then you can begin to do something about it. And, of course, this letter that we have co-signed, Bob Barr, Ron Paul, and myself, and I'm sure by now is on the way to the governor's office there in Missouri, in which we give him 3 days to come out and repudiate this document, to take
Chuck,
it down.
do you have the letter in front of you, in former presidential candidate Chuck Baldwin?
I do have the letter.
Hey, I'm going to sit back here. Will you read that on air, please?
Well, it's a little over 2 pages. You want me to
go ahead and read it? Yeah, let's read it. It's important. All right. First time here exclusive. Go ahead.
All right. Dear Governor Nixon, the three of us write to you as former presidential candidates, as concerned citizens, and in the case of Ron Paul, as a sitting member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and Bob Barr as a former member, 1995 to 2003. We bring to your attention a most disturbing document being circulated by the Missouri Information Analysis Center, MIAC, over the seal of your office and your name as governor. We respectfully demand that the following described document be immediately removed from any and all websites associated with or maintained by the state of Missouri or any agency thereof, including the MIAC. That the said document no longer be circulated by the state of Missouri or any agency thereof or associated therewith. That the state of Missouri repudiate its references to the three of us as contained therein. The document to which we refer is identified as follows, and a copy enclosed herewith. And, of course, it's the MIC Strategic Report dated 2/20/09, and it's entitled The Modern Militia Movement. 4 names appear on the masthead of this document: Jeremiah W.J. Nixon, Governor; John M. Britt, Director, DPS; James F. Keithy, Colonel, MSHP; and Van Godsey, Director, MIAC. The aforesaid report is imprinted at the bottom of each page thereof with the following designation: unclassified, law enforcement sensitive, close quote. It would be difficult, Governor, to recount in any letter of reasonable length the nonsense and inaccurate information contained in this so-called strategic report, which concerns purported analysis of the modern militia movement, in quotes. The report draws links between white supremacists, anti-immigration persons, people opposed to gun control, those who do not favor the Federal Reserve banks, and much more. Were the report nothing more than a nonsensical diatribe penned by some uninformed person, we would certainly not take our time writing this letter. Although we might respectfully suggest you might want to question why such nonsense is of interest to and being disseminated by an agency connected to the state of Missouri. Our concern, which we believe warrants your attention, however, is found at the top of page 4 of this document, after the heading Political Paraphernalia, as follows, quote, militia members most commonly associated with third-party political groups. It is not uncommon for militia members to display constitutional, and that's a misspell because it's Constitution, not constitutional, party, campaign for liberty or libertarian material. These members are usually supporters of former presidential candidate Ron Paul, Chuck Baldwin, and Bob Barr, close quote. If it is the intent of the state of Missouri to link three legitimate former candidates for the office of the President of the United States, who also happen to be a sitting member of the U.S. House, a former member of the U.S. House, and a Baptist minister, then this document clearly does so. And this is the basis for our demand that the document be removed, its distribution, and any actual implied adoption by the state of Missouri stop. If it is not the intent of the state of Missouri to make such a link or implication by and through the appearance and distribution of this document, then we similarly demand the document be removed from any and all websites maintained by or associated with the state of Missouri or any agency connected therewith, and that the state issue an immediate and unequivocal repudiation of the document. In view of the fact that there are indeed real criminals present in Missouri and many legitimate matters of public safety on which your office, the Department of Public Safety, the Highway Patrol, and even the MIAC should focus their attention and resources, we respectfully assert that spending any time, resources, or effort on the nonsense contained in or about this MIC strategic report constitutes an irresponsible and inappropriate use of official resources.